Hey guys and gals, welcome back to the podcast. I've got kind of a special edition. I don't normally go live at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, but had an opportunity to have Erik Allen on the show today. He's a longtime podcaster, lots of experience, chats with a lot of cool people. So we're going to see where this conversation goes. But Erik, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Oh man, it's such an honor to be here, dude. Thank you so much for the invite, man. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, you bet. So tell us a little about who Erik Allen is and kind of some of the events that brought you to becoming the man that you are today.
Man, I grew up in a typical household, is what I thought, Eastern Washington area, played Little League, went to Sunday church, things like that. My parents got divorced when I was 11. Never heard the word before. It was kind of a shocker to the system for sure. Yeah. And my mom got together with a guy who was very physically abusive almost immediately. And I called the police all the time. They'd show up. My mom wouldn't press charges. It just blew my mind. And they did the smart thing. They got pregnant and then decided to move myself, my sister, and then my little brother, who's a couple months old at this time, or half brother there, to Stevensville, Montana, population 1,200 people, man. And we got up there and it's beautiful property, 5 acres right by the Bitterroot River and 2 ponds on the property. But the house they rented was 3 bedrooms. And so it was one for them, one for my little brother who's a couple months old, and one for my sister who's 4 years younger than me. And they said, Erik, you need to live in the garage. So I literally had this like plastic tarp down the middle of the garage, and my bed was on one half that had the fireplace. Literally the truck would pull in, on the other side of the plastic wall there. I had a fireplace that would keep me semi-warm in the negative degree winters of Montana while I was out there.
That's brutal.
It was pretty crazy, man. The abuse continued once I was out there, and it was probably around, I was 13 years old. They came home arguing one night. It wasn't anything different than any other night. But I remember this moment, brushed my teeth, and I felt like God was like going, dude, you got to turn around and see what's going on. And so the way that the house was set up was behind me was the kitchen to the pantry to the garage door where my room was at. Mm-hmm. As I peeked around the corner, I see this man on top of my mom in the pantry area there, and just one shot after the other, just boom, 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 right to her face. And I was like, all right, I got 20 seconds of courage right here. And I just grabbed a cast iron pan and I walked up and clocked him in the back of the head. And it didn't knock him out, but it split his head open. And he turned around. He said, what then as he did that? I took another swing to his forehead and split his forehead open. And, bleeding down his face. I swung so hard the second time, I fell over. I remember him standing up over me and he's like yelling and screaming, blood's coming out his face. My mom jumps up, lands like 6 punches in a row. There's blood splatting on the wall. I mean, just chaos. Cops show up, take him to jail. My mom doesn't press charges. I'm thinking I'm like this hero. Yeah.
Right.
Right. And I literally got kicked out of the house a couple weeks later because of this incident. I had 3 months left of my freshman year of high school. And so I went to live with my buddy at Forest in downtown Stevensville. We would steal cigarettes from his dad on the way out to school, go to school. And then that set me on this path of destruction for the next 10 years, man, where I would get arrested by the time I was 18 years old for having drug paraphernalia. I get kicked out of my dad's house at 2 weeks after graduating high school, moved 21 times between the age of 18 and 21, moved to Seattle, $100 in my pocket, living off credit cards. So by the time I'm 21, I was $28,000 in debt. Finally land this job in the music business out in the Seattle area. I'm living this rock star lifestyle. I don't know how to play. I'm backstage, and, but I was going to 2 to 3 concerts a week, totally living the rock star lifestyle, drugs, drinking, backstage partying, and then I get laid off my 1-year anniversary. And this is right around like the Napster days, if people remember Napster, but it's totally
that's a throwback.
Yeah, totally right. So, and I was just this lost dude, man. I was like 23 years old. I was, then I started working at Starbucks as a night manager, and I would get off work and go to the grocery store, grab a 6-pack of beer and go to Hollywood Video and rent a movie on DVD, and drink myself to sleep every night in my ghetto apartment. And one night this girl walked into Starbucks and she'd been in there before, but I hadn't really chatted with her, but she said, hey, we've got a cool college age event down at our church. Would you be interested in going? And I was depressed and no friends, and she was good looking. Yep. What time do I need to be there? Right. That's what's going on, And so I got there and I really felt like God was putting a seed in me in that moment, man, because I ran into these guys I hadn't seen in 4 or 5 years. And then it was about a month later, it was Easter 2004. I went out and partied with my buddies. I was managing a band at the time. Wake up Easter morning, surrounded by probably 15 guys in my buddy's basement. We're all drinking. And I was the only one awake. And I just felt God going, dude, you're going down this path that's going to end your life real quick if you don't start making some changes. Mm-hmm. And so for me in that moment, I decided to give my life to Christ right then and there. And I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything in that moment. And I texted that girl up and I said, hey, thanks for inviting me to that church event. Maybe I'll see you at the store sometime. And we were dating a month later, and she's been my wife for almost 18 years now.
Wow, that's awesome. That's incredible.
Yeah. So that's how I got on the path that I'm on today, man.
all it takes is that one person to kind of wake you up and to shift your direction. And I mean, it's a whole new world that opens up.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it was in those moments, shortly after I realized that my past and other people's opinions of me didn't define my future. And once I realized that, it was like, man, now the doors of opportunities are going to open up.
Yeah. So what would you say, like, I mean, with all those things that happened and the arrest, the things you went through, the moving, the drugs, all of that, living in that lifestyle, what was your key to making that change I mean, essentially you're going one way, spin a 180 and you're heading the other way. What was the key for you to make that shift?
So I had to change my environment, and really this is a key for anybody who wants out of any sort of addiction or away from a negative family member or relationship. I had to change that environment. And so what I did was I called my buddies up I'd been partying with for years. And I just said, you know what, guys, for me, I got to get healthy. I got to get away from this party scene for a bit. And they were like, all in. Yep, dude, get healthy. You do what you got to do. So I had great support system, but I had to step away from that. And I replaced that party scene with guys from the church. So I started finding guys in the church that had great marriages, great businesses. They had great walks with Christ. And this was like pre-podcasting days, but I was like taking them to Starbucks and going, tell me your story. I want to know what you're doing to live the life that you're doing.
Right.
And so I just replaced that environment that from that addiction side to now I was addicted to just getting better. And hopefully I could share my story. The problem was I was too nervous, to share my story. Really, like some of the guys I did, but I mean, I'm 43 now. I didn't share my story till I was 39 years old.
Yeah. Wow. So, it's interesting to talk about shifting your environment. I've been reading Atomic Habits, and he talks about, I think he talks about the guys over in Vietnam getting addicted to heroin while they were over there.
Yeah.
And the surprising thing, when they came back, like 90-something% of them never touched it again.
Right.
And as they got to researching that, it was because of that environment shift. And it really gets your wheels to thinking anytime you are caught in an action or caught in a habit or a destructive behavior, to how can I shift that environment? Would you say that it's helpful to, or important to, not only shift the people that you're around in that environment, but also maybe the physical environment that you're in, like completely moving location, or what's some keys there?
100%, man. I think it's good to get away, right? Like I grew up in the town where you either got it the heck out of Dodge when you graduated, or you stayed there and made babies. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that, man. I'm out. Like,
gotta go.
I had the opportunity to move to Seattle with a buddy, and I had $100 in my pocket, and I filled as much as I could in my Honda Accord and hit the road, man. Didn't tell anyone from my family. I literally called them from Seattle and said, hey, I'm out. I moved to Seattle. Like I just left. And I think that's healthy sometimes. And when my wife and I decided to move to Idaho, we both come from kind of chaos, crazy backgrounds. And we knew that we moved to Seattle or moved to Idaho, we would be away from that. And we purposely were kind of a drive away from if we needed to get there, but we didn't. I mean, even still, her parents and family don't have my current address at all. And so we didn't want any of my family or her family to just show up and say, hey, I was in the neighborhood, right? Like we wanted to get away. And so we had to change that environment, and it made us closer. We didn't know anybody when we moved to Idaho. My son literally turned a day, 1 year old, the day that we left Washington to head to Idaho, and he'll be 10 this year.
Oh, that's incredible.
It's just been this fun journey, man.
Yeah. What would you say is the best parts of living in Idaho? I've been through that part of the country a couple of times, and I've always loved it, but sadly I can't convince my wife to move us there. So we just got to settle with visiting from time to time. What's your favorite part of being in that area?
Man, for me, it's the freedom, man. I come out here, and even during COVID, we were kind of like, what the hell is COVID? Like, we didn't have any, like, there wasn't any like shutdowns or anything. Like Costco was the only place out here that made you wear masks for the first 5 months. But then after that, they're like, yeah, whatever. But like, I never have to drive outside of a 5-mile radius where I'm at, and I've worked from home since 2015. So I put like 6,000 miles on my cars, my 2 trucks combined, throughout the whole year, so it's just like, I love this area just because of the freedom. Like we have an open carry policy. If you want to carry, you can. You don't have to, right? It's so much like non-stress living out here. I don't have to worry about who's in the White House. I could care less. Like, I don't watch the news. Like, I worry about what's within my 5-mile radius, man. And it's just peaceful, man.
That's awesome. The country out there is incredible too. Are you more like in the mountains, or like kind of what's your immediate living area like?
Yeah, I'm in a neighborhood.
Okay.
It's the goal of mine to buy some property. I actually have this goal poster on my wall when I walk into my office, and it's a cartoon that says, if I can't pee off my front porch, my neighbors are too close. Right. So like when I walk in, I go, that's what I want, man. I want the 20 acres minimum, and so that's what we're shooting for, So.
There you go. Awesome. Awesome. Get that little homestead, get a few animals out there, get that going. That's fantastic.
I have a feeling it'll turn into a zoo once I buy the property. But we'll see.
It does quick. It really does. Especially if you or your wife is an animal lover. Every time you come around, they're like, hey, I came across a cow that somebody needs to get rid of, or goats, or brought home some cats or something.
It's funny. I'll probably play into that quite a bit because I'm the same, man. I want the animals. So.
Oh yeah, that's great. My wife and I live on 20 acres here in Kentucky, and we're like 20 miles from a 3,000. I don't even know. I think there might be 3,000 people in the county. Okay. 20 miles from the closest town, and it's great. I mean, my neighbors are too close. I think their house is like 100 yards that way.
Okay.
But I mean, there's not many people, and it's fantastic. I love it.
That's awesome, man. Love it, dude.
It's great. What about, so after you made the shift, you got married, you moved away. Were there some things that you had to put in place, like some stopgaps, or like what's keys to keeping you on track, pushing towards the life you want to live rather than falling back into those old habits?
Yeah, I mean, it's so good. It's definitely part of the environment, right? Like changing the environment. And my wife and I, like we go to church every week, and our faith is a big factor in our relationship. And it's what has kept us together for 18 years, when
any two people are together, it takes something more than those two people to stay together that long.
For sure. Yeah. Like, I mean, being married for 18 years, not every year is rainbows and sunshine, man. Right? So, and I think just our faith is really strong. And so for us, like we did have to put some stopgaps in saying, hey, you know what? My family can't come in. We still have a little bit of contact with my family, but I'd get nervous and stressed out whenever my mom or my dad come to visit us. So I just kind of try to avoid that, and I've told her since day one, I'm like, I want to just buy the 100 acres, go out there and not tell anybody where we live. Right. Like, I'm cool with that. Like, I'm 43. I don't need my mama. Right. Like that's how I kind of look at life,
Yeah.
So we did have to put some stop gaps in there, and we were very open in like communication. She's a lot better communicator than I am, but like I've been working on that and getting better. But like our kids, like they know that we'll never get a divorce. Like they see us argue, they see us make up, they see us slow dance into the kitchen, right? They know when we're not on the same page, but they see us like coming back and saying, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. I apologize. Right. And when I mess up and I'm a bad dad or a bad husband, like I want to step in and say, man, I screwed up, man. I'm so sorry. Like I want to make this better. And so our kids see that. They don't ever have to worry about us getting a divorce. And so those are those things that we've kind of put into play and said, you know what, when we said I do, I mean it, man. We're not ever going to break this. That's awesome.
You don't see that nearly often enough these days. What is it, like more than 50% of marriages end in divorce, even in the church?
In the church. Yeah.
That's an incredible statistic. Like it blows my mind.
Yeah. And we just wanted to break those chains of abuse, addiction, rejection, and divorce that has affected our family. Both my parents and her parents have been married and divorced probably 5-6 times. And we just said, we're not doing that.
No more.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And I think a lot of that, like I love what y'all are doing, what you said, not hiding the disputes, the arguments and all that stuff from your kids, but even going beyond that is letting them see the restoration and the making up afterwards. Like I think that's a huge problem in a lot of relationships is parents try to hide that, but kids can see when things are tense and when the parents aren't getting along. So they see that part, but never see them coming back and making things right, apologizing. Yep. So I commend you on that. That's incredible.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what do you do professionally out there in the woods of Idaho?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been working from home since 2015, mostly in the tech world. So I do a lot of sales, and I currently work in customer success, so post sales and managing accounts and things like that. But have worked for a couple of different startups for the last few years, and it's been fun, man. You know, they know that I have a podcast. They know that I do my side hustles, and they encourage it. They're like, hey, you know what? If that's helping you grow and helping you be happy, then go do that, right? And so they know that I set aside anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour each day to either record a podcast or join someone on a podcast like this, and it also helps me on the corporate side go, hey, I can help us with podcasting, or I can help us with training, you know, and running webinars, because I get so much practice out of this. And so, you know, I've been home since 2015, which is, like I said, and my kids have only known me to work from home.
That's awesome.
You know, it's been really cool to see that. And forever, they thought my only job was working Top Rated MMA, which is my MMA apparel company I had for a long time, you know. But they come upstairs and they see me, like I get to put breakfast on the table for them, and I make them lunch. And then I see them immediately when they come home from school, and I get off work and my commute is 15 steps down the stairs. Right. Like, and so that has allowed me to really, I think just, I would never go back to an office environment, man. Like even if whatever happens, like I'm not joining a company unless they allow me to work from home at this point. You know?
Yeah, that's awesome. A lot of people like to bag on the direction that the country is headed today, or the state of the world. And there's a lot to not like about it. But I mean, on the flip side of that is we have opportunities today that have never in recorded history been present. Like 20 years ago, you couldn't work from home like that unless you made lots of phone calls, and then you had to have stacks of phone books. I mean, you didn't have the internet and the opportunity to build an online company.
Yeah.
50 years ago, you almost didn't have telephones back then.
Right.
And so, I mean, the opportunities today to be able to work from home, having, you know, maybe working for a corporate business and then building your thing on the side it's unlimited. It's only limited really by your imagination.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, in the end goal for me is to walk away from the corporate job and just do full-time coaching and podcasting and fun stuff like this. Cause this is what fires me up, man. I love conversations like this. And, you know, and so for me to break away, like the big thing at work is like, you know, taking those mental blocks, don't get burnt out. Like this is how I don't get burnt out. I get to have phone calls and conversations like this, man.
Yeah. You got to have the escape from, I don't know. I hate to say the escape, because I would love for everybody to be able to find some purpose in what they do, but sometimes you do have to have that thing that recharges you so you can go back to whatever's supporting your lifestyle at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
What's the focus of your podcast?
So my podcast is very much on entrepreneurs, world changers, and success-minded people. And so when I first started the podcasting in 2017, it was MMA. It was an MMA podcast. So I talked with MMA fighters from all over the world, mostly up and coming fighters, and really just asked them like, why do you want to get in a cage you can punch in the face? Like that was my only question, you know, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was in a walk-in closet in our house. I had bad lighting, bad microphone, bad camera, didn't even look in the camera, you know, and I was like recording on FaceTime or Skype or something like that. I forget. And then just uploading to YouTube and sharing that link out and calling it my podcast. And so I was like, well, how do I listen on the Apple? And I was like, what the hell's that, man? I didn't even know what Apple Podcast was, you know? And so I started researching. I'm like, oh my gosh, man, I'm missing so many people here. And so I just started deep diving for weeks on like, how do I get this thing set up and what's an RSS feed and all this. And 2018, I came across Ed Milet online. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's values, his beliefs, like the same as mine. I want to be like that guy. And so he inspired me to start the podcast that I have today. And I was lucky enough at the end of 2018, he ran a contest on Instagram where he said, hey, I want you to record a 1-minute video, submit it to stories on Instagram and tag me. And I want to know, why do you want to be successful in life? And so I did this, totally nervous as could be, like had no idea what I was doing. Submit this video on Instagram, right? He's got about 1 million followers at the time. And he's posting all these things like, oh, there's a top runner. Here's a top runner. And I'm like, there's no way, man. I'm an Idaho guy. And I wake up one morning and he's tagged me on a post and I won the contest.
Wow,
and I landed
awesome.
a phone. Yeah, I mean, it was crazy, dude. I won the contest, landed me a phone call with Ed, just me and him for 30 minutes on Zoom, changed my life forever.
Nice.
And I was able to record that and release that as episode 12 of my podcast. And that kind of opened the door. Like prior to him, I had Sean Whalen, and then it was Ed, and then it was Tim Story and Brad Lee and Dan Caldwell and Ken Shamrock, and all these bigger names started joining my podcast. Like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I got something here. And so here we are almost 200 episodes into the new show, and man, just loving it, dude.
Yeah, it's awesome. All it takes is that one break. You mentioned in your application, you mentioned networking, and that's a huge key, is finding the right network to plug into.
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody gets that opportunity like what you had. What outside of that, what is your key to finding the right network and plugging in there?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many groups on Facebook that you can join, right? And I'm in a few different masterminds of guys that I've connected through podcasting. Well, first of all, I think everybody should have a podcast because it leaves this huge legacy for generations to come. They can hear and see my emotions and hear my voice and the tone of my voice, right? Podcasting, if you're not doing it, go do it, because it will open up doors of opportunities and networking like crazy. Yeah. But in a physical sense, in a local area where you're at, there's typically a ton of like business networking groups, or there's, speaking. Oh, gosh, I'm just totally drawing a blank now. I don't know what. There's a lot of networking groups where I live. So typically it's a lot of businesses, right, where you'll meet up once a month.
Like
sometimes
BNI or something like that.
BNI, yeah. So sometimes there's a membership, sometimes there's not. And I would say just get out there, and like there's a place out here called the Innovation Den, and every month they have this monthly speaker that will come in, and it's free, and it's at a coffee shop, and you get to go sit down and go to those events. Now, a lot of people aren't comfortable just going to places, especially if they don't know them. And here's the thing is, if you want to be successful in life and business, you got to get out of your comfort zone, man. You got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And so, man, just go there. And I've done that. And I've met so many people just kind of putting myself out there. And I think as adults, we have this fear of like, oh, what are people going to think? Or I don't make enough money, right? Or like, who cares? Or like, go and if you want to do something bad enough, you'll make it happen. And so, man, I say network with as many people as you can. I was a guest on Brad Lee's Dropping Bombs podcast last year. And one of the conversations I had with him was, we were talking about networking and relationships, and he's like, look, dude, relationships is the new currency. If you have enough networking and relationships in your life, you can get whatever you want.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. It's so true. I'm finding that more and more. I don't know where you are on the introvert extrovert scale. I tend definitely towards the more introvert side, but I'm trying to come out of that. And cause I know that those relationships are some of the most important things in life, not only to help you achieve what you want in life, but just for general happiness. I mean, no matter where you are on that scale, you're happier, more fulfilled with those relationships in your life. So I'm much
more on the extrovert side than and typically my wife's kind of like, why you keep talking, right? Like
there's always that one in the relationship that's on and on and on. Oh, that's great. So on your website, your tagline is get known and noticed online.
Yeah.
How do you help people get known and noticed online? Is that what the focus of your podcast is, or kind of what your coaching is around? Talk to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think how I help people get known and noticed online is, one, I bring on guests that have stories of ups and downs through their life. Whether it's David Meltzer or Ed Milet or someone here locally in Coeur d'Alene. The very first question that I ask them when they get on the show is, tell me about where you grew up and what was childhood like for you. And I do that because I want my listeners to understand that no matter what level of success that my guest may seem that he's at, we're all born as a kid and we all made choices to get to where we're at. Yeah. Whether we walked off the path into jail and addictions and things like that, and we came out of that, or we just had this perfect straight life, then, we're all the same. We're all human, right? And so I think the way that I help people get known and noticed online is my guest and myself, we come on and we talk about us going through these failures. Hopefully us putting that out there first allows someone else to feel a little bit more comfortable sharing their story. And that's what makes the impact on the world, man, is once we can share our story with people, like as much as we can think, oh, there's no one else going through this or no one else is going through that, right? There is. And if we can share that story, that can impact somebody's life. And you never know, that could change 1 million people's lives just by you sharing your story one time.
Yeah. It's incredible how people connect through story, like going all the way back to when people sat around fires, I mean, what did they do when they were there? They told stories. They passed those legends on down until they were able to write them down. And now with technology today, we can speak it into a microphone on camera and share it out there with the world. And people, if you can spin a good story, not just spinning a yarn, but if you can spin your concepts into a story, which is something I'm trying to learn.
Yeah. Oh, me too.
You connect your ability to connect is exponentially higher.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's incredible. And that's part of the reason why I started podcasting, is to learn how to tell stories a little better, and just to help me be able to better verbalize things. And it's helped a lot.
Yeah.
Although right now I'm stumbling over my words.
No, I mean, I'll tell you, like, I'm still learning, even 450 episodes into this thing. Like, I love learning and tweaking things. And even today I was tweaking my camera and my microphone, and I've got this cable that's being a big dummy and keep falling out. Right. But like, I'm always trying to tweak things and get better. And one of the things when I was talking with Ed, he said that it really impacted my life is, he said, look, man, there's this acronym that you need to live by, and it's CANI, CANI, and it's constant and never ending improvement. So no matter where you're at in life, you should always be looking to get better at it and leveling up. And, he says, look, if you're walking around at 80 degrees, go find guys that are walking around 120 degrees, and just being in their presence is going to lift you up and motivate you to be better. Right. And so that's part of that, getting uncomfortable and meeting people in your network. Right. But it's so important to just be constantly leveling up, man, in this game. Yeah,
that's great. I want to ask you this, and maybe you'll have a answer right off the top of your head. Maybe you won't. What is the best nugget that's come out of all of your interviews that you can remember?
Yeah.
Out of all your guests?
Talking with Ed, and I go back to Ed because he's the man that started this thing, man. But there's a couple guys like Tim Story. He talks about, and a lot of people have heard this, but turn your mess into your message, man. Ed said, look, everything in life happens for you, not to you. And I know that Tony Robbins says kind of a version of that as well. But once I realized that things were happening for me, not to me, man, that was a game changer for me. Like, if I'm going through struggles, or I'm hitting a roadblock in life, or I'm hitting a speed bump and things aren't going or happening how I want to, I have to take a step back and go, what am I supposed to be learning in this? What can I learn and tweak and get better at? Because I failed more times than I could ever think of, in every area of life, from marriage to dad to, just being a man, like everything. And so I now as an adult, I got to sit back and go, man, what am I learning through this? Why aren't I moving forward? And there's something that's holding me back. Okay. So there's some lesson I'm supposed to be learning right now. So I really try to dial back and go, okay, what's happening right now? Life is happening for me, not to me. So let's learn a lesson here.
I like that. That's great. I always like when people talk about failures. So many people see failures as, just a piece of rubble or something like that. But if every failure is a Lego block and you just dump them in a pile, you don't have anything. But if you take those each one of those Lego blocks, you can build something with it, a stairway to that success.
Come on.
And so it's, oftentimes the people that have the biggest success have experienced the most amount of failure. Like it seems to go hand in hand. Their amount of failure equates to their height of their success. So
for sure, man.
But I don't like failing, so I'm trying to learn to be okay with that. I don't think any of us do.
No, and I think people look at failing as a bad thing. It can cause us to think it's a bad thing, but really it is. You only fail if you quit. Right. So whatever you're going for, just don't quit. Right. Like, I've been doing this podcasting thing for 7 years. Like, I'm not quitting anytime soon. And someone asked me the other day, like, what are you planning to do when you retire? I'm like, I'm going to die when I retire, man. Like, that'll be the last day of work, man. Like, this is something that I love doing, man. So it's just like, there's no time for stopping, man. They just don't quit, man.
Are you, with your podcast, are you an episode a week, or kind of what's your schedule like?
Every Friday at 7 a.m. Pacific is when it drops. Occasionally I'll do a bonus show that drops on Wednesday during the week. I had a bonus show drop today. But typically it's going to drop every Friday at 7 a.m. Pacific, and it goes out to all formats from YouTube, IGTV, Facebook, and then Apple, Spotify, all the audio formats there.
Okay, awesome. So that's like I know some podcasters who are 3, 4, 5 episodes a week, long shows, and I can see you doing like a 5 to 10 minute show 5 days a week, but I don't see how people squeeze a long show in 5 days a week unless that's the full-time job.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I get up at 4 a.m. 6 days a week to work on my podcast and work on editing and reaching out to clients and working on all of my kind of side hustles that I do, from, content creation and, box opening videos and stuff like that. It's because I wake up at 4 a.m. because it allows me to kind of not eat into my family time. Yeah. I get up when my family's sleeping and I can work on my side hustles. And then I go down and make breakfast for my kids at 6:30. And about 7:30, 7:45, I come up here and go to work for a little bit. And then 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I kind of try to put the phone away. I'm not 100% perfect on that, but I try to put the phone away and just spend time with family. I don't have to worry about work and stuff after that.
Awesome. I want to go back to kind of before you got married. You said you were big in the music scene, living that rock and roll lifestyle. Is music something that is still a passion for you? Are you still involved in that in any capacity?
Not involved, but massive fan of music. Music has been my life forever. I remember, as a kid, my dad took me to see Richard Marx was my first concert, and then for my 13th birthday, he took me to see Rod Stewart, took me to see some pretty legit bands, and I grew up in an era where there was a skating rink, right? And the skating rink in town, it had local venue, concerts would show up there, right? They're just grunge bands trying to play guitars, right? But I remember those house parties and the skating rinks that would just have concerts and stuff. And so to a lot of concerts, man, I've seen a lot of really rad bands, from Rage Against the Machine to Linkin Park for $10 at an unsold out show in Seattle. It's been a fun journey, man. I love music and love watching live music. And I don't know how to play anything. I have a guitar sitting behind me. It was my dad gave it to me. It just collects dust, but I love being part of the music. And when I worked for Universal Records, I was literally a mailroom guy. I didn't get paid for the first 6 months. I just showed up and they said, okay, cool. I need you to stuff these posters. And that's all I did. And then after 6 months, they're like, man, this guy keeps showing up. We should pay him. So I got hired on as their mailroom coordinator, and I was tracking sales and I was setting up meet and greets and stuff like that. And it was fun, man. But like I said, Napster kind of killed that. But yeah, my wife and I, we both love music. At the time when I was working for Universal, I was taking home 20 or 25 CDs a week. And when I met my wife, I sold 3,200 CDs, and it crushed my heart to do that. But I sold 3,200 CDs and paid for my wife's wedding ring.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, yeah.
Now you can have you can have all of that on a little.
Now I got it all back. It's all on Apple Music now.
Yeah. You don't have to worry about you probably filled up more than this shelf right here behind me. With all the CDs. It's incredible as the technology improves and moves along.
Yeah.
The carrying case or the physical aspect of the music gets smaller and smaller, right. But there's still something about, I grew up, my dad was a huge record fan. He had tons of old LPs. And so I grew up hearing that sound, and there's still something about the crackling of vinyl. Oh yeah. I love that sound. I don't listen to a whole lot of music. I used to enjoy it quite a bit, but I don't know. Modern music has just turned me off of it. So I listen to a lot more podcasts and audiobooks. Yeah,
it's a lot. It's pretty brutal.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. What's something that you would say to somebody who's on the fence about moving forward with a dream, or they have something that they want to go after, but just can't quite make themselves take that step? What would you say to them to encourage them to move ahead?
Man, I would just say, what's holding you back? If you got something in your heart that you want to pursue, then do it. You have to sacrifice things in life to get to what you want. And maybe that's sleep, or maybe that's money, or maybe that's moving out and living on, random rooms for a month or whatnot. Right. I can say this because I've done that. When I moved 21 times in over a 3-year span, there was days where I was living on a floor of someone's second cousin's friend who said you can stay there for 3 days. Or you have to sacrifice things in life to get to what you want. People ask me all the time, why do you wake up at 4 a.m.? It's because my desire to be successful is bigger than my desire to sleep. And so if you are struggling and you're like, man, I don't know if I should pursue this thing, like go for it. If it's on your heart, man, I truly believe that God puts our purpose and our passion in our heart, and whatever lights you up, man, that's all. Go all in on that thing, man. For me, that's podcasting. For me, that's being a dad. For me, that's breaking the chains of divorce and abuse and rejection and all of that stuff, right? Yeah. That's what lights me up. And I think as you're going through life and you're trying to figure out like, what should I do? What do I love? Man, test everything that you think you might like. And one of those things is going to light you up. And you're like, man, I want to keep doing that. And then just go all in.
Go all in. Yeah. Here's a question that I love asking people. Talking about purpose is one of my favorite things. And I'm always interested in how other people define purpose or how they come to find what their purpose is. What is that for you? What does purpose mean to you? And how do you go about discovering, defining purpose? Like, what is that to you?
Purpose for me is being the best dad that I can, to give my kids the life that I didn't have. I don't want my kids to ever walk into the house and have one parent be gone, or my parents be physically fighting, right? Like, I don't want them to ever see that. My purpose is to change the legacy of the Allen tribe for generations to come. You know, my grandparents, my grandma and grandpa, and my wife's grandma and grandpa were married for 60 years. What happened on that next generation gap, man, where our parents were married and divorced 5 or 6 times? I'm like, hell no, not doing that, right? Something in that generation caused that to happen. And my job is to come in and I want to be the one that changes everything. Yep. I want to be the one that comes in and says, nah, we're not doing that no more, right? That's a purpose of mine, is to do that and just to create an environment where my family feels safe to talk and do things and not feel like they're going to be in trouble to say what's going on or what's going through their mind. Right. So my purpose is really that, to break those chains. And then my passion is also my purpose. And that's this: it's podcasting. It's talking with people. It's having great conversations like this, man. You know, I wanted to push myself hard. So in 2021, I set a goal to be a guest on 100 podcasts. On top of releasing 100 of my own. And literally the year before that, I did 26. So I was like, oh yeah, I could do 100. No problem. Right.
You can 4X that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went into 2021 going, all right, we're going to do this. And I finished the year with doing 117 interviews and releasing 100 of my own shows. And I'll tell you, man, that stretched me mentally, but it helped me figure out that I love podcasting. I love conversations like this, man. And some of the shows I was on was like, what the heck am I doing on the show? Right. But some of them was like, man, this is awesome. Right. And it just opened the door, but you have to test things and go all in, man. And for me, my purpose, man, is my family and podcasting, and just networking relationship stuff is so important to me, man.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. That's incredible. Anything else you want to share or have to say to the audience before we call it a wrap?
Man, I'm just so honored to be on your show. I'll tell you, man, being on over 150 podcasts now since I've started, I love your questions. I think you do an amazing job at asking questions and keeping the flow going. And I think that if people aren't listening to this show, man, they need to get on it, man, because this is an awesome show, dude. Seriously.
I'm definitely clipping that.
Yeah, dude. Seriously. Man, you're an awesome host, man. I loved your flow of questions, man. It was so good. My only message to the world is this, man: turn off the news, because they have their own agenda. They just put fear in everybody. And number 2, just stop judging people, man. My God says, don't judge people, right? So it's not my job to judge people. If they're not hurting themselves or hurting others, I could care less what they identify as, or if they're, want to identify as a toaster, that's up to them, right? Like for me, like, I'm just like, hey, you know what? My job is just to love you where you're at, man. And I don't care if you're a vaxxer or a non-masker or whatever, right? Like, love people where they're at. And turn off the news. And those are the 2 biggest things that I did 10 years ago, man. And once I did that, I was like, oh, all right. My wife's like, why don't you ever get stressed? I'm like, I don't care, man.
TV didn't tell me to.
Yeah, right. Like, I don't have to get stressed, man. I'll live my life of it. Right. So, man, but yeah, seriously, this was such a great conversation, dude.
Yeah. I've had a really good time too. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So this will, it was awesome. I appreciate it. And, well, I'll definitely send you the link when this comes out and go from there.
Awesome, man. So, and I'm one of those guests that will share it out too. So whenever you do, man, please tag me, shoot me an email with all the links. I'm happy to share it out with my network too, and hopefully get some more listeners to your show.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Have a great week.
You too, brother.